there it goes. All right, so the rounder your clay is, the easier it's going to be to work with it. So I'm going to pound it out. We have our raku clay for our raku project. And the 3 tools that I said we needed are the modeling tool, we have our pin tool, and our chunky sponge. And if you guys have any questions, you guys feel free to ask along the way. All right, so when you have your ball of clay, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to try to like throw the ball of clay right in the center of the wheel to make sure it gets stuck first. So what I'm going to do is take my ball of clay, find the center, and I'm going to press really hard down to get it stuck, just like so. Okay, so once it's on here, I'm going to turn my wheel up. You'll notice that the way my feet are positioned on here, you always want to make sure your feet are flat on the floor. And when you're centering it, your left hand is going to be on your left side and your right hand is going to be directly on top. Whenever you're working on the pottery wheel too, your hands have to be pretty much lubricated. You're going to be wetting your hands with the water and then putting your hands on top of the clay. Okay, so I'm going to just get my hands wet. So you'll start to see that my hands are now bumping around quite a bit, right? So you can even see it's definitely not centered right now. My hands are just kind of mushing around. So what I'm going to do first to make sure this is really stuck on the wheel is I'm going to push down. It's almost like when you're wedging clay, you're going to push directly into the center of the wheel. You have to use a lot of upper arm strength to get your clay centered on the pottery wheel. Okay? So my feet are flat on the floor. You want to make sure that your head is directly above the clay. You don't want to be back here. If you're back here, you can't get enough leverage, so you want to make sure you're kind of face forward. And then what I'm going to start to do is start the positioning for my hand to make sure that I start centering the clay with a flat side on the side and then a flat plateau on top. And to do that, your left hand is going to be positioned on the side right at about 7 o'clock, and you're going to push up toward 1 o'clock. Okay, and my elbow is going to be pushed into the side of my leg, and my right hand is going to be almost like karate chopping down on top to make it nice and flat on top. And you want to put even pressure on the top and the side. So if I put too much pressure on top, it's going to make it flat like a pancake, and if I put too much pressure on the side, it's going to push the clay off the wheel. Okay, so it's kind of like you have to train your hands to get the right kind of pressure. So I'm pushing in on the side, I'm digging my elbow in my leg, and I'm trying to concentrate. You can even hear sometimes if it makes a clicky noise, that just means that the bat is kind of moving around a little bit on the bat pins. You just have to kind of ignore it sometimes, or if you're able to fix it, you can try to tighten the bat pin underneath. So you'll notice once I'm going to center it really quickly. So I'm going to push really hard, I'm pushing down, even pressure, and then I'm going to let go very slowly. See that? Now it doesn't even look like it's moving in the center of the wheel. That's how you know that you're centered. If you look at it from the side, you don't see any kind of wobbling. It looks like it's just kind of the same way as if I turned it off and on. Then that's how you know you're centered. Okay, it's going to take you about a week or 2, maybe 3 weeks to actually get to this point. So it's a lot of practice. So you'll see too, once I have it centered, if you think that you have it centered and you let go very slowly, like I'm applying all this pressure and I let go really quickly, now look at it, it's not centered anymore. Right now it looks like there's this big wobble on the side. So you have to make sure that whatever kind of movements you're doing on the pottery wheel, you always have to let go very, very slowly. So once again, to be centered, my left hand is going on the left side at about 7 o'clock. I'm going to be pushing inward. Make sure you're pushing that way and you're not pushing down. I have so many students that say, oh, I think I'm getting splinters from my bat. That just means you're pushing hard down on your bat. You shouldn't be pushing down at all. You're pushing in on the side of the clay. So I'm going to push in on the side. Notice I keep wetting my hands. I'm going to be karate chopping down on top with this part of my hand. And you always want to make sure your hands are touching one another. If they're not touching one another, they're not working together. So they always have to work together. I'm pushing down. And once you think that you have the hang of it, you're going to try to push more on the side to make the clay taller. So if I just keep pushing on the side, see how much taller it gets? And if I push too much down on top, it's going to get flat like a pancake, right? So you have to start training your hands to figure out, what do I need to do to make this thing centered with the proper height? So I would say that this thing needs to be almost like the same distance up as it is wide for your first raku project. So once we master centering, I can do the next demonstration on how to actually open the clay up to make your cylinder. That's a whole nother task right there. If you want to, the reason why we have this modeling tool, we can clean up the sides of it. Whenever you use your modeling tool, I say almost hold it like a steak knife if you're, you know, think of like Halloween or whatever. But you're gonna trim up the sides by taking your modeling tool and making your mark. And then you're gonna drag the clay away by taking this angle right here and dragging it against the pottery wheel to clean it up. And to clean it even further, we have our sponge. It's always best to have a nice clean wheel head. If it's not clean and you have a lot of muck on the side of it, the wet clay or the slip that's created on the wheel is going to add into your piece of clay, and it's not going to be you know, as easy to work with it because you're going to have a lot of water saturating your clay. Try to always keep a clean wheel head. So I'm going to throw it off center again. So you can see it's like really wobbly right now. You can't make a pot if it's wobbly on the wheel. So the reason why it needs to be centered is because when we go to pull up the side walls, if it's moving around too much, your walls are going to go from thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin. All right, so it has to be directly in the middle of the wheel. So I'm going to push in on the side again. I'm pushing in with my elbow. I'm going to karate chop down on top. And then I'm going to let go very slowly. So I'm like releasing pressure, and it even looks like it's not 100% centered yet. Maybe it's like 98% there. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to push more on the side. I'm almost pushing all of my body weight in through my elbow, down through my arm, and into the side of the clay. And I'm always touching them to one another. I always say it's almost like you're trying to catch a bug out in the grass. Always have your hands interlocked together. We're going to make like a butterfly motion. They should always be interlocked and then working together. Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions so far on centering? I think I covered everything. Yes.
When you're a lefty, so you want to do like the opposite, like you want your right hand on the side. I might just do it right.
Yeah, so just flip everything. Well, you can do it. You can still do it left-handed because it's going to be easier for you to get leverage on the other side. So for lefties, you're going to use your right hand on your right side and then your left hand karate chopping on top. So for my right-handed people, left hand on the side and your right hand karate chopping. So whatever, you know, hand that you are, that's the hand that's going to be karate chopping on top. Okay. Any other questions though? Okay, so I would say probably by the middle of next week or the end of next week, we need to have centering mastered so that we can start making our cylinders on the pottery wheel and getting things prepped for our raku project. All right. Okay, so for cleanup purposes, so now we have this big wad of clay on here, right? So at the end of the period when we have to take our clay off, what we're going to do is we're going to take our modeling tool. We're going to use this part of the modeling tool to kind of like go into the side of the clay. We're going to be scraping it off the bat. You want to make sure your wheel is turned on. It doesn't have to be turned up fast because if it's too fast, it's going to be flying off. We're just going to take this and drag it into the center of the wheel. There we go, and it just came right off. And then while the wheel is still spinning, we can take our sponge. We're going to smooth this out. And then now my bat's pretty much clean. What I would still do is I would take the bat over to the sink area, make sure you wash it all down. So once this is washed down, I would take cleanup sponges, bring your cleanup sponges over to the pottery wheel. You're going to wipe out the inside of your wheel to make sure it's prepped for the next class period. You can even, watch this, if you made a really big mess, what you can do too is take the clip off of here, and then this slides out, and then this slides off too. Okay, so you can bring the whole thing over to the sink area. We're going to be washing them all out. When you're done and you bring it back over here, make sure this is almost like sliding on top of this part right here. And then you want to make sure that they meet back together. And then you put your clip back in for the next person. Because if you forget to put the clip in and that person puts their water up here, it's not clipped together, the water's going to fall off. This is going to fall off the back. Okay? All right. So what we're going to do, we have about like 20 minutes until we would have to clean up. So I want everyone to quickly go to their lockers, take out your ball clay, and set up on your pottery wheel.